Welcome to the Tiger Interview Series.
In this episode, we have Trent Leimkuehler and Rafael Lopez, both very well versed in the catching position. I wanted to answer the question, what is catching? What does an evaluator look for? A professional evaluator look for when they can say, yes, that is a good catcher. What skills, what attributes? You'll be pleasantly surprised on their answers.
All right. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to Kangaroo Court.
Yep.
Guys, in this episode, I have Rafael Lopez and Trent Leimkuehler. I've had them both on the podcast. Trent is very familiar with the Tiger Interview Series, so he's back in the saddle on this one. And then Rafi we had at the closing pitch, which was a phenomenal episode, talking about clubhouse culture. And if you guys want to listen to those, closing pitch with Rafi was episode 86. And then episode 14 was Trent Leimkuehler on the Tiger Interview Series. You doing all right there, buddy, with that microphone?
I never figure this out, ever.
They bob up and down.
Yeah. Stay. There we go.
There it is. There it is. What I want to talk about is Trent is very well versed in a lot of the baseball development side. Has iron catchers here with us in St. Louis. Rafi, obviously, his background with Major League Baseball and has played multiple positions and has done a phenomenal job with the catchers that we have in the high school program. So I wanted to bring you both to the table and have a candid conversation. Have you guys even talked to each other about catching at all? Like
not
really,
yeah.
little.
So this is a first. So
Yeah.
we're catching this live. Like
Summer ball started. It's been crazy.
This is going to be very interesting. So the main thesis of this episode is I feel like everyone knows what a catcher is, but they don't know what a suitable catcher is. And this conversation is stemming from our conversation, Rafi, from at Lindenwood, when I was like, so who's the best catcher in Major League Baseball? Is it Yadier Molina still? And then you looked at me and just just blank stare. And I was like, oh boy, here comes a really good conversation that's about to stir up. And not to say that Yadi's a bad catcher. It's just the details of catching is not very familiar with in the mainstream media, household, all of that. So I want to dive into what are the key skills, key attributes, and the talents of making a strong catcher. So before we start, I want to get an overview of how both of you view the catching position. So we can start with Trent first, and then Rafi, you want to come in on your overview on how you view catching. So go for it, Trent.
Well, most of the time when I view a catcher, and everybody simps around this, it's a catcher. You got to have a guy that can catch the ball.
Hence the name.
Yeah, hence the name.
Makes sense.
I used to have a coach in college. I don't want you to be a dropper. I want you to be a catcher. So I always like to see a guy that receives the ball pretty well, that's a leader back there, that works hard and kind of does a lot of the dirty work. If he can do a lot of that, he's going to be a good catcher. Because most of the time you see a lot of guys that come up in the game that are pretty good with the bat behind the plate, but then they don't work well with the defense. You see a lot of guys that come up a little bit slower to where they're really good with their defense, receiving, blocking, all that. Their bat comes along after. So I'd rather see a guy that's going to maybe be a little bit better on his defense, catching, blocking, and then comes along better with his bat and doing things like that. So,
Rafi, what's your take on just a brief overview?
It's a very interesting position in the sense that when it comes to it's like the center of a team, not so much a quarterback. Mm-hmm. So everyone, you're the quarterback back there, you're the quarterback there. I feel like a catcher is more the center. Catchers don't get any glory. The quarterbacks do. Centers don't get glory. So centers and catchers, I think, are very similar positions. They're well-liked people usually. They're energetic. They're smart. And they know how to do their job and be okay with not getting any gratification from it. So just adding to what Trent said, let's add that part to it as well.
Because in that conversation that we had, it was Because I said, oh, it's like a quarterback, and you're like, no, it's not like a quarterback at all, because
Similar.
he's not calling. He's technically not calling the plays, which the quarterback is calling the plays.
It's almost a suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's more of a center on the field. So
Calling audibles.
So the center's the one who's pointing out where the defense or the defense is at. The center's the one suggesting
Calling out
plays to
blitzes
the
and stuff
quarterback,
like that.
suggesting maybe an audible to the quarterback. They're still audibling along the line.
Yep.
They might change a blocking package at the line that the quarterback's aware of. The pitcher is more of the quarterback, honestly. When it comes to the defense, as far as we're just strictly talking what pitch he's going to throw. He's obviously most important to his game. He knows what he wants to do. You're trying to make him do what he wants to do, but also what you want to do at the same time, catching. So like I see it more as like the center, just because there's not as much glory as being a center as there is a quarterback.
So
And
putting
I feel
down-
like baseball,
Yeah, think of it the same way as like when a guy throws a no-hitter or a perfect game, they don't talk about the catcher.
It's so true.
They talk about the pitcher.
Do you ever feel slighted about that?
Yes.
But I have heard
I've been putting down my fingers all night long.
At the end of the day,
I've
it's the
thrown as many
pitcher's
pitches
decision.
as that guy. Like,
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's the pitcher's decision.
Yeah.
You can call the best game
'Cause
and they may not want to throw what you put down.
Because you're making a suggestion, technically. Mm-hmm. Is it kind of like Bull Durham, where you get pissed off if they don't
It's
take the
exactly
suggestion?
like Boulder. I mean, like I know it really is. It's exactly, especially at that kind of like old guy, young guy kind of thing. It's definitely very much like Bull Durham. Very, very much. I mean, you'll sometimes get pissed at the pitcher and tell them what's coming.
Really?
And most of the time, the hitter won't believe you, and if anything, it works to your advantage.
It's
that's
that
a
cat
great
and mouse
scene in
game.
that
It
movie.
really is. Yeah,
It really
that
is. It really is. So
Stewardess
how
on
how would you define the purpose of the catching position, Rafi? What would you say the main purpose of that position is?
So, when people say like be a brick wall back there, be a wall back there, they're telling you blocking, and when I see it as it's not just blocking, but you literally are the brick wall. Like you're kind of even though you're not the last line of defense, it feels like you are when you're catching. Obviously you have your infielders, outfielders out there that are your line of defense, but when it comes, there's no one behind the catcher to help. Infielders have someone behind them. It's just you. In my mind, you're kind of like you're in the trenches, and that's where I like to compare it to like offensive line. So I think someone who's willing to realize you're the only position that all the fans are behind you chirping at you. You can't see them. And so that's tough when you're trying to focus and you can hear them right here on your head, just blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So, I just feel like you're almost you're in the trenches, and that's physically, emotionally, everything. Like if you're a catcher who's not into the game, you're not into being good at your job, you're not into wanting what's best for that pitcher and the best outcomes possible, and not willing to get beat up while doing it, don't catch. So that's kind of my
And I want to get down into that with like just like the development side, because I feel like it's really hard to find a strong catcher. You hear that with high school baseball and college baseball. Like a kid could say, "Oh, I'm a catcher." It's like, are you?
Yeah,
Yeah, like that's huge, because even when I'm teaching really, really young kids, I've had maybe 2 7-year-olds this year, and the biggest thing that you have to teach with them is trusting themselves, trusting their gear. They have to get used to the ball actually hitting them. If they don't get used to that and trust their gear, well, they're going to hate that position, because that ball is going to be coming at you, hitting you in different direction or different ways. The ball is getting thrown at you every single time. So you have to be able to know and like it. Like there's people back there that don't like it, but they still do it.
Yeah.
But then if you don't love it, like Ralphie said, like you have to be out there working your butt off to try and help your team win. And that's, like you said, the dirty work. You have to do the dirty stuff to help your team out.
Well, you can tell a guy that just uses his glove versus uses his whole body. I mean, even how they wear their gear. A lot of coaches don't show the player how to actually wear their catcher's gear, which is, I wasn't a catcher, and I'm looking at them like, you say you're a catcher, but right now you're not presenting yourself as a catcher. Can you guys talk about like how you actually wear your gear? How? I mean, because it seems like
literally,
seems like such a basic question, but a lot of kids don't wear the gear correctly.
Yeah, I mean,
or it's too small.
It's too small. Yeah.
The thing that drives me nuts, especially with like younger catchers that I'll have coming in, they'll have the throat guard that's supposed to be up here, like you literally resting where your neck and chest connect, and it's down almost below.
Because they're not
heart.
wearing that. They're not wearing that.
The whole upper part of the ribs are just and sternum are completely open, and I'm like, of course you're scared of the ball.
So it's because it's not. So it's because it's not tight.
It's not.
In the back?
It's tight in the
It's
back
not
and
tight
like
enough.
raised up.
But if you also think about it, it's a lot of the companies too.
Yeah, they
it's
just
the
make them
development
for
of what those
looks.
straps do, because sometimes they tighten them all the way.
And they don't go any tighter.
Yeah, they don't go any tighter, so you have to make adjustments to it, and that's what some people don't want to do. They don't want to make adjustments to their gear, so that's why you see a lot of guys, maybe in the professionals or in the college ranks, that they tape their gear up in the back because they want to try and make it as tight fitting as possible.
Oh, that's why they do that.
To make sure that
I had
doesn't
to.
move.
You had to.
I was too short.
Yeah. So like, really, like, there's a lot of like normal catching gear is a standard size. You don't have a fitted thing like if it was like pads or
12 to 16. It's
Yeah.
like, well, I know how big I was when I was 12.
Yeah.
And I know how big some dudes are at 16.
So like,
doesn't go together.
yeah, you could get 12 to 16, but then there may be a kid that's 12 years old that may have to go into an adult gear, and it's him swimming in it to where his shin guards are going up to his mid thigh, his chest protector is moving around so much, and he's
Mine
going to
always
grow
went to
into.
my mid thigh.
Yeah.
The shin guards always went mid thigh on me. They didn't make a 5'8" version.
So what's your opinion on knee savers?
I used them. I loved them.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't like them because I think it sits guys up too high. There's a good and a bad thing about them, but I really think they don't save your knees as much.
I had to wear them.
Yeah.
I couldn't catch without them.
Why is that?
It would hurt. My knees would just,
Oh, just personal
Yeah.
genetics.
from day one was like knee surgery. We talked about it a little bit.
Yeah.
So I had to use it.
I can see that, but then I can see also like if you've ever like sat there and you put something behind your leg, like if you put there, sometimes it puts more pressure on your knee. But it depends on how you wear them. You see those people that put them up on the very top rung in the middle there. That's going to make it.
Do you think
worse.
Do you think players just rely on that knee saver where they're not getting into their correct positions, where they get like lazy?
I think it depends. So like what he was saying with like having them too high, like with the knee saver actually too high, they're supposed to be resting kind of more on your Achilles, like start down there and go to like right below your calf. Some people put them on their calf, and that's like when I think it's way too high. Where for me, it actually helped me because it actually got me up a little bit. It was easy for me to get low. I had no problem getting low. My problem was my knees would get in the way. So now all of a sudden it actually raised my butt up that I could get my upper body over my knees catching. So, I mean, some guys it's helpful like that. The other thing is when we were talking about tall catchers earlier, when you're not all of them do, but when you're like a super tall catcher, your levers are that much bigger. So it might help them. It may not. It just depends. I think it's more of a personal preference. I could see where like young kids, it can make them lazy, and that's where I have a talk with them. I was like, if you wear them, you just can't be lazy.
Because also if you think about it, they're going to sit on those a lot more. And if you're trusting that knee saver and really sitting into those knee savers, you're not going to be able to react down to block. Everything's always going to be back. So anything that you're going to do is going to be more shifted back with your weight instead of forward, like Rafi said, to where your chest needs to be forward a little bit more, okay, be in a more athletic position to be able to react. You're not going to be able to react as much with those knee savers back there sometimes, so kids trust them too much. And that's why I don't like them sometimes, because you'll see a kid and you'll just sit there catching, and I'm like, yeah, you probably feel comfortable, but we need to get you up. We need you to start trusting getting into your legs, staying in your legs a little bit more, staying stronger and being a little bit stronger there.
How do you know if the shin guards are on fit nicely? Is it just
I mean, you just
personal preference?
You look at it and kind of tell, honestly. If
Really?
they're too
There's
low,
no
too
like
high.
guide for someone that's listening. Be like, oh yeah,
Well,
that kid's wearing like
I mean, you want it
baby gap.
covering above your knee.
yeah, but the main thing, most shin guard most companies are going to have a knee pad on the inside that's adjustable. You want that when you put your shin guard on to be on your kneecap. So there's some kids where you can tell if their shin guards are too small that part is too low.
Gotcha.
It's more like on below the kneecap. So you want that there because that's a pad to where when you go down and block, it's there for protection too. But it helps you measure that out. But really there's not a right or wrong way of like trying to measure it out. It's more of trying
Just
to
personal
see.
preference.
Yeah.
So 2-piece or 1-piece helmet?
I was a goalie helmet guy, 1-piece. I would occasionally wear 2, but I had a better field of view with the goalie mask on.
And did you leave that on when pop-ups happened?
If it was right above me and I spot it right away, yeah.
It seems like every coach is like, all right, you got to take that off.
The goalie mask, like a good goalie mask is designed to not take off ever.
Okay.
Plays at the plate, you should never take off your mask, period.
No.
And you see a lot of coaches tell their kid to take their mask off. And I'm like, that's your head protection of a dude sliding into you.
Yeah.
Even though they're not trying to take you out, like they're still
not
sliding
anymore.
into
They
you.
can't
There's
do
always
that,
those
yeah.
accidents.
Or even they slide into your leg and the ball's coming. You know what I mean? So like, there's a lot of accidents that happen. But I was more. I would go back and forth every year, and then my last 4 or 5 years, I was like, I don't care if it doesn't look as cool. Like I'm wearing the goalie mask. Backswings, it's more protective. Getting whacked in the side of the ear, like you don't have anything there with the 2-piece.
Yeah.
So really, it comes down to like, do you want to look cool or not? In my opinion, the 2-piece looks cooler.
Yeah.
But the 1-piece is going to be way more protective, and you're actually going to see better out of it, in my opinion.
There actually is studies out there now, and I was a 1-piece guy. I would do 2-piece every now and then, same thing. That the 1-piece, they're actually having problems with guys getting concussions with the 1-piece because some of the masks, they don't absorb the shock of that ball, because when that ball fouls off the bat, it doesn't absorb it as much. It's more of just hitting, and then your head gets whacked back. And
Well,
stuff.
I mean, that's a really good point because like catchers' helmets and just baseball helmets in general haven't come up to the protocol of like what NFL helmets are.
But there is
right now.
There is a company, I forgot what the company is, that they
Force 3, I think.
and they have those shock
Springs,
absorber springs in there, and a lot of people are going to those. But a lot of people, that's why you see a lot of umpires using the 1-piece or the 2-piece mask, or just use the mask itself, is because they say when that ball hits it, it's going to fly off usually, or fall off when it hits it. So it's going to kind of absorb that and kind of whack the ball off and take the mask off. So when that mask comes off, you're not absorbing a lot of that force on your head.
Yeah.
when
But
you're
that
wearing
does put a raised question, like a foul, like a backswing.
That's
Because
why a lot of people
I've done
don't.
that to a
Yeah.
catcher. And I felt
The skull
horrible.
caps have zero protection.
Yeah.
So like you'll get hit over the head with the skull cap, and you'll have a knot in your head.
Yeah.
There's
Like I feel like
literally-
that's
it's
more
this thin
common
layer of
than a
practice
foul
and
ball
that's
hitting you in
it.
the head.
It's just like anything. There's a lot of pros and cons with these.
Yeah.
So it's again back to preference. It's comfort. It's what you feel is good. But the thing is, in Missouri, you can't wear a 2-piece mask in high school. You have to wear a 1-piece.
Oh, they don't
two-piece-
allow you?
No,
In
high schools,
In high
yeah.
school, they don't allow you.
Same
Oh.
with Florida, I think too. The problem with the 2-piece too is like if like he was talking about, it's actually a good point, but it depends on the metal you're using. So these titanium masks are really popular because they're so light. They're awful for you to use because they don't give it all. Titanium's super light, but it's super strong.
It's kind of like the
So it
old cars
hits,
back
it's
in the
like
day.
ting, and like you're absorbing all of that energy. Where you want more of those like alloys that will actually dent and bend, because that dent and bend is taking the energy of the ball, not your face. Yeah. So like where the face padding does help. So like it's funny you bring it up. You'll see a lot of guys wear a hat when they catch with the goalie mask. Little do they know it's actually like absorbing some of the energy of the ball. I would wear. They would give us these green little like they were like concussion paddings really that we could put in our goalie mask, and then Velcro all the pieces in. Some dudes would even, if you ever see a catcher wear kind of like a not a do-rag, but like a little skull, like hat, I guess you could say. It almost looks like you're putting a swimming thing on, but it's not. It's just, and those will actually have padding in it too.
Oh, really?
So they make little like literally like do-rag looking things, like ski cap almost, that are super
what the
thin.
Are gonna wear.
Yeah, and they have padding in them. So I wore that in my last year, and because like you were saying, there are times if it hits you even with the goalie mask, and you're like, geez, But a lot of the catchers are using titanium. The umpires too. That Nike mask, everyone thinks it's so cool. It's awful. No offense to Nike. But they got really cool gel pads, but it's titanium metal. The titanium is the worst thing for you to wear. And like the scientists, everyone will tell you that.
Yeah, it's
But
just like
cool.
yeah, it's just like the cars
know?
back in the days in the 30s and 40s when people were dying because there was no protection in those cars. Like literally, when you got in a wreck, it was built so strong that you'd be like a pinball going all the way around that car because it was just it was basically
The
a
point
big
of cars
hunk of metal
breaking now are to
to
break.
absorb,
Protection.
to absorb
I mean,
the.
It's the same as like because when I was starting up, when I was getting like new gear and that, I remember going and getting my mask and kind of making sure it would fit and stuff. And I will always remember this. And I don't know if like the new mask is with the padding in them now, but every time I would wear my mask, they would always tell you to at least have like 2 finger widths from your forehead to the padding on the front, because when that ball would hit, it'll absorb it a little bit easier. But I think a lot of those masks now, that padding is right against those guys' forehead, so it's not absorbing that impact as much.
Yeah, if you have that huge pressure on
So
your head,
some
and,
guys-
and it added more energy into that,
So some guys might be
getting
wearing
dinged
their
up.
mask a little bit wrong. So a lot of these younger guys, I always try to make sure, because they always try to make it as tight as possible to where they don't want the darn thing to move. You want that mask to move a little bit. You want it to move around and kind of give. So some of these kids are so worried about the mask falling off and this, but if it falls off, that's fine.
Yeah,
Especially when you throw, if it's moving around when you're throwing in that, like,
yeah, just put it back on.
yeah,
You'll be good.
just square it up and go.
Last thing you want is you to have a concussion.
Yeah.
From a evaluator's perspective, what skills actually matter?
So,
Well, let's go through the skills first from
Okay.
an evaluator's perspective, like the skills
rank
that.
them?
So we,
Yeah,
are we
well,
going-
let's just list the skills out there because I don't think a lot of coaches, parents, and players don't know the skills that are actually being evaluated by coaches,
I would agree.
like strong coaches that have a background in catching.
Yeah. So
First one I would say is looks, like if you're wearing the gear correctly.
Eye test.
Yeah, it's your
Okay.
eye test. So,
Eye test. What's after that?
honestly, it's. Can I just list them?
Yeah, just go.
So, a lot of parents think throwing. That's the only time a catcher really gets any sort of glory is throwing.
Yeah. How hard do you throw? What's your pop
And
time?
are you throwing guys out?
Yeah.
When in reality, like once you get into pro ball, that's the last thing they look at.
Yep.
They want you to receive, block, lead, and game management. Those
Okay,
are
so-
like literally tied for
So let's list it out: receive, block,
Game management.
game management,
calling a game as part
and
of
then
game
after
management.
that comes
Throwing is dead last.
What's that? What's before? Is there anything else before?
I mean, if you want to simplify it, blocking, throwing, receiving, blocking, game management should all be tied for number one.
Okay.
and then you can go
and
into
then-
probably.
Then throwing.
Then throwing. Got it.
Yeah, I would say like game management would probably include with fielding a bunt, taking care of your pitchers, doing all that type of stuff. So
Now let's deep dive into receiving first. What makes a strong receiver? Trent, you want to go with this first?
the biggest thing I always look for is a guy with quiet, soft hands, a guy that looks really comfortable, has good rhythm back there. That is always the biggest thing, because if a guy looks really stiff, he's moving around a lot. He's not
Body
gonna-
movement or hand movement?
both.
Okay. Because like
Yes.
whenever I don't have a really strong eye for catching, but I do notice when catchers have when they receive something and the ball literally takes them away from the zone. That's where I'm just like, whoa, that guy needs to pick up an outfield mitt or something.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
figure out his receiving.
I,
Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, and I always think like any person can look at and go out there and watch a game and be like, that guy's pretty good at catching. Like you should be able to, like if a guy is good enough back there, receives the ball well, has quiet hands, and you can go out there and go watch a baseball game and see that, anybody should go, wow, that guy's good.
So what's quiet hands, meaning it's not moving at all when they receive a pitch?
It depends.
It depends.
Like,
It looks easy almost.
Yeah.
I would say.
I teach my guys to everything's an illusion, is what I teach my guys to the umpire. Like, you need to make an illusion that it's a strike. And if that means move your glove 3-4 inches properly, then that's okay.
Not like a quick catch thing go
If you're
over.
doing it
not
in
a drag.
Everything
if you're
goes back
doing
into the
it
middle.
one motion, like, and it's going up 3-4 inches, like, I'm not going to say a word, but you can't let the glove go down first and then up. It has to be one motion up into the zone. Everything's kind of somewhat funneling back into the zone.
So
But you don't want to catch it and then go straight to the middle.
No, I mean,
Think
you
of
just
the
bring it
movement
back a
as
couple.
pre-movement, like pre-pitch movement before you catch the ball. So
With your
everything,
glove.
with the glove. So everything that you're having is pre-movement. So you're working through the ball, but as you're working through the ball, you're catching it.
So
at the
let's
same
just
time.
use a hypothetical example, is that I'm throwing a pitch low in the zone, middle low, and I want to move my hand below that ball and move it up towards the middle of the zone.
Think of it the same way as like bat path.
Yes, identical to bat path.
Okay.
So you're trying to match the plane of a pitch when you're hitting and be in the zone as long as possible hitting. Same thing catching. You're trying to match the plane of the pitch receiving, and that always means getting underneath that plane. So if it's a curveball going away from you to your right as a catcher, your glove should actually be going further right and below it to be able to work underneath and up to that pitch.
That makes sense.
Always work yourself back to the strike zone. That's why they call it framing. I always tell some kids it's almost like framing out an actual picture frame. So you're starting outside of that frame, bringing your glove back in.
So the best analogy for me would be, imagine a huge funnel attached to the zone, and literally your glove is in that funnel trying to bring everything back into the
Whether
middle.
it's up, down, side, inside, outside.
That's why you
like,
see
Same thing. Got it.
That's why you see a lot. If I get people go out and watch some videos of drills and stuff, some people will have these strike zones made of string to where the catchers will work their gloves so it's visual, so they can see it. Because really, if some people are listening to this and they watch game, that strike zone on the TV is not actually there. So, but for the catcher visually to practice,
That's
we
literally
want it
what
to
you
look.
want. That's literally what you want.
Yes, we want them to see that so that they can see that visually, to where when they go out and do a game without that look, it's more of a repetition for them.
So
anything.
blocking wise, what makes a good blocker? I feel like a lot of coaches are like, oh, he just kept the ball in front of him. That you've done your job.
So, I mean, obviously form's important, all these things. At the end of the day, your job is to just get the job done. Would I prefer you to have a certain type of form, a certain this, certain that? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, if your form sucks, I mean, your form's good, but you can't block the ball and you suck at blocking, it doesn't matter. So, at the end of the day, it's like, do you keep the ball in front of you? Does the ball, what we talked about being a brick wall earlier, is like, does the ball get by you? How often does the ball get by you? So at the end of the day, whether that's a blocking issue or just knowing when to block, I don't know. It depends on that player. But yes, there's certain forms that are very important, postures within blocking that are important, how to actually learn to absorb the ball. I mean, I used to exhale as the ball hit me so it could dent in literally my
Because your whole goal
diaphragm.
is to try to keep the ball as close as you possibly can on any block.
But at the end of the day,
you are
on any block, you're trying to keep it as close to you as you can in front of you, or right below you, whatever.
So would you ever try to challenge yourself to see how far that distance?
we would
be?
do
They do competitions all the
we
time.
would do competitions where we draw lines in the dirt and hit this is 3 points, 5 points, whatever.
Got it.
But at the end of the day, when it came to the game, I didn't care what my form was. It was like, just get the job done and don't let the ball get by me. Do not let the runner advance. That was keep a double play.
Yeah, that's why you see
That's-
some
that-
guys.
That's why there's so much advance. Like
At the end
player
of the day.
runners advance way more often in the younger ages than the older ages because of that reason right there, which is
Just find a way to keep it in front of you.
yeah, you're keeping the way in front of you, but also like the younger catchers, when they do block, the ball shoots off away from them, and they're not able to grab that ball and throw them out.
And that's why you see a lot of guys, like when they're blocking, they may go down on one leg, one knee. I've actually seen some guys where they're still in their catching position and they're still blocking the ball. The ball pops up and they're going to block it.
Yep. Well, that's a huge issue right now with the one knee down, one or two knees up.
Yeah, but like you still see some guys like Yachty used to do it all the time, to where he would be up, but then like on curveballs, he'll go down, drop that, and slide that one leg out. Like you see that a lot of the times too with guys, just to try and absorb it, get on top of it a little bit more, and deaden that curveball because he knows that ball is going to that spot.
Do you think it's a little unfair to be critical on young catchers because the pitchers don't know where the ball's going majority of the time? I mean, I feel like in Major League Baseball, even though they're throwing 98 miles an hour with hard cut, at least I know exactly where that pitch is going to be at, right?
I mean, the ball, they don't throw the ball to where you sit up half the time, at least. So, I mean,
they're not as good as we think they are.
They're in the zone more. They're not necessarily hitting their spot as much as people think. They're just in that general area a little more.
What would you say, like, percentage-wise? How often, like, the best in the big leagues?
Probably 50% hit their spots.
No way.
It's a coin flip. I mean, really, that's a suggestion, and in the back of your mind, you have, well, he usually misses here. So if I call here, you literally have to learn where they miss when you set up in certain positions.
That's a really strong point for just hitters, too.
You got to also think of this.
You have to think of that.
The ball moves so much for some of these guys. It's hard to control a lot of that movement sometimes.
Yeah.
So they're going to, again, back to talking about what we were earlier, where your glove is, okay, most of the time, as you learn, if a guy has a lot of movement, sometimes maybe a guy wants to see that target where he wants to throw to, and then when you start to get to that pre-pitch movement, then you set up to where that pitch is going to go. So that some guys are a little bit different, to where you may want to go where you want that pitch to end up, but that pitch may not end up.
It's
there.
almost
That's
like that makes catching position so much harder if you think about it. Because like as an infielder, I had to think of all the different situations. I mean, you played infield. Like you're thinking of all the scenarios that could possibly happen before the play actually happens. Catching, you have to think about every single pitch what could possibly happen, and you have to actually call the game too.
Yeah.
And catch it and block it.
And block it
and react. I mean, you name it. Remember what pitch you threw. Remember what you did to that hitter the previous at bat. What got him out. What he looked good on. What he looked.
So
bad
your
on,
memory has to be really good.
That's the hardest part of catching is actually remembering the game while you're. I mean, we'll go high school, bottom of the seventh, and their fourth hitters had 3 at bats. Well, you have to remember if you're calling the game, you have to remember what you called that guy. To the best of your ability, every pitch.
Well, even the situation too, because the situation could have been different.
At least remember what got him out.
Yeah.
And so it gets very tricky. But what you're saying too with the young pitchers earlier is that like with my 16-year-olds this year, is there's times I'd be like, hey, like what happened there? And they're like, coach, it was a fastball in the other batter's box. Okay. So, sometimes it's hard to tell with depth and if they spike something. And that's where it's like, just slide out there and scoop it if you can. So I'll work hands a lot with the catchers we just don't do blocking. We'll work on like putting the machine to their right and working on a wild pitch, like scooping it.
And actually trying to.
Because think anything in the batter's box.
They don't hit their spots. They just don't.
In the batter's box, like if it's the left or right of the batter's box, you're sitting middle, you're not going to get out there and block.
Yeah,
like
even
no
a
one's
curveball
getting out
that
there.
you wanting to block.
Yeah, there's people that will practice balls that get spiked into the 50 feet, maybe a curveball that are going to bounce up high.
I would stand up and block pitches.
You're not going to go down to your feet.
Just do anything you can.
Yeah, literally just stand up on a really short curveball and just.
It's almost thinking it like when you're blocking. I tell a lot of kids this because a lot of kids that are goalies in hockey are the same way, or they sometimes are catchers. So I kind of tell them the same thing. Like, feel like you're a hockey goalie trying to not let that puck get into the goal, to where if you need to slide out, kick it over or something, or get your glove out there as much as possible, scoop it. You're
do whatever you can.
Whatever you can to keep that ball from going to the backstop.
I want to go back to this 50% thing that you talked about. Pitchers only hit their spots 50% of the time. Is it hard misses where they're actually missing completely away from that location?
Sometimes. I mean, that's probably if you divide that, I'd say 25% that are like full misses, and the other 25% are like a general miss.
Because my point is that I think hitters give pitchers way too much credit on like locations. Like, I deal with my lessons and I say, hey, where are pitchers throwing you? They're like, oh, they're throwing me inside. I'm like, they're not throwing you inside. I'm telling you that right now.
If you literally, if you
Especially
took a
not
piece
nice.
of paper,
Yeah, they're throwing outside.
you just took a piece of paper and turn it like this and call it a plate. I would never look here.
He
and
put
I would never
the
look
the
here.
paper horizontally. If you're not watching the video.
Yeah. So literally like this.
Yep.
And just take 2 inches of this piece of paper on each side and don't look there. And literally look the heart of the plate down the middle, and you're gonna get a pitch there.
Yeah, because
Almost every at bat.
Well, they're mistakes. If they're trying to throw outside and they make a mistake, it's either going to be a ball,
yeah,
or it's going to be down the middle of the heart of the plate.
and then high school ball, everyone, all the kids, you hear, oh, they're calling it outside. They're calling it outside. Blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? No crap. They're calling it outside because
That's where
these
he's
pitchers
throwing it.
aren't good enough to throw enough pitches over the plate. They're gonna call pitches that aren't over
Also,
the plate.
think about the umpire.
Or else
He's
we'll be
sitting out
there-
there for 8 hours.
we'll be
and he's
there all
like,
day.
bro, everything looks the
honestly-
same right now.
No, we'll be there if umpires called just the plate in youth baseball. We'd be there all day. Like
Oh, yeah,
It'd be
without a
the
doubt.
most boring
it'd be
games.
awful.
It'd probably be 20-20.
Yeah.
Or
That's
just
what that's what I
walk.
get.
Yeah,
That's what I
like,
mean.
I get a kick out of it when
I don't think you get through the third inning.
No, you wouldn't have enough pitchers.
yeah, like I get a kick out of it. Like parents.
So then you just change the plate, what you're looking as a hitter.
Parents, I love you so much, but when you're dogging the umpire on an outside pitch that is not close, and you're like, oh, that was a strike last inning. It's like I get it. It's just that umpire's been out there for 6 hours and everything looks the same, and he's just trying to call the best game he possibly
Most of them
can.
during tournaments are doing 5 games. Yeah. So, 2 hours. They're out there 10 hours.
Yeah. The only time that I ever get mad at an umpire is if it's a botched call
And it's that obvious
It's
he's not
that
trying.
obvious, and it's like, whoa, what happened here? Like there was a hit in Indianapolis. We had a hit and run. There was a hit and run play, and the guy swung super late, and it was he would have struck out, and we threw the guy out. He didn't call the hit and run. He didn't call it as a swing. And I was like, come on. I know that I'm not calling ball. I'm not giving you a hard time on balls and strikes, but you at least got to see that the guy actually swung. But anyways,
It's the consistency. That's what gets me.
yeah. Like I can deal with umpires that have a consistent zone where it's like, all right, I'm going to give you 2 inches off the plate. Sure, let's roll with it. I'm totally cool with that. But when you don't call it on the next inning, that's when it kind of gets like a little
Dude, umpires would literally big league games. Like
Yeah.
on a Sunday getaway, the umpire would come up with his big old boot they'd wear to protect, and he'd go on one side of the plate and draw a line, and on the other side of the plate and draw a line. He said,
No
boys, if it hits the line, it's a strike.
No way.
So and what are you gonna tell him? Like, oh, screw you, ump, like blah blah blah. Like you're like, okay. And if anything, those were like the best games you had as a pitcher and even as a hitter, because you were just like, all right, like I can't be keyholing everything. I can't be looking for the perfect pitch.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as the perfect pitch.
See, I love when umpires do give the rules of engagement.
Yeah, they're just like, here you
because
go.
everyone knows, okay, that's the rules of
your
engagement.
strike zone.
Even though that the game says it has to be between those black lines on the plate, I'm totally fine with an umpire saying, here are the rules of engagement. That's why I'd always
I'm down with it.
I mean, that's what I would ask. I was like, is that as far as it goes? And then
Yeah.
he would be like, no, it could probably go a couple of more inches. Perfect.
Yeah.
And then he would be more honest with me, and then he knew that I wasn't going to give him any crap on it.
That goes back to the same way as like communicating as a catcher, like with
Yeah.
the umpire. Like there's so many kids out there right now that are showing up the umpire.
Yeah. Well, even the emotions, yeah.
Holding the glove there, shrugging your shoulders, doing all that, turning around to talk to him, all this. Like you have to be able to create a relationship, because what's going to happen is if you may not get that call there, guess what's going to happen? If you're showing him up,
You're not going to get it again.
you're not going to get that call.
Period.
But
Yeah.
if you're talking to him, being friends, he may give you a couple calls when you're at the plate hitting. To where if that pitch is a little bit close, he may call it a ball for you, just because you're the guy protecting him back there. Because that's the other thing. You're protecting the umpire when you're back there as a catcher. So if you're going to do your job, he's going to do his job too to help you out most of the time.
Do you think the automatic strike zone is going to hurt catching?
It is the worst idea I've ever heard in my life.
Wow, came out of the gate hard there.
I'm just throwing that out.
Right in the paint.
I think it's a terrible idea.
What it'll hurt is not just the catching itself. It's going to hurt the aspect of like the framing, like all that stuff that a lot of people have learned in the past years and really worked on. That's what it's going to hurt.
I feel like it's the nature of the game. Like human nature is part of baseball. Like eliminating human nature is just not It eliminates the excitement of the game too.
If it's to the point where like it doesn't have to be from that person saying like so they're up in the press box going ball, strike, ball. What if it's a ball that is right down the middle and the umpire just obviously misses the call and it's an actual strike? That's when it needs to be an adjustment, because you got to think they're still human. But if that ball is right down the middle and they're calling it a ball, that needs to be fixed. That's when that guy can be up there and go, hey, you missed that.
But I mean,
That's a
how many
strike.
times does a major league umpire miss that call? Except Angel Hernandez, but a major league umpire missed that call.
You'd be surprised how many.
Really?
I don't think it's as bad as you think.
I think high school.
It doesn't happen.
High school but I mean
This year
high
has
school.
been bad.
I mean high school umpires I can understand, because again it goes back to if I'm sitting out there for 6 hours in the brutal sun on turf and trying to call a game and be very precise and very perfect. That's a recipe for like there's gonna be
It's not the same.
as you keep on going down the line with each game, the probability of you making a really strong call is less. Like that's why I always ask the umpire, like, "Oh, what game is this for you? How many more games you got left?"
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Oh, this is my last game." Like, "All right, boys, this is gonna be not a great umpired game, just to let you guys know."
Yeah. It's with your point, it's just like, where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, okay, if it's an obvious ball, do we ring back to the umpire like, hey, call that you called that a strike, it was an obvious ball, and you switch it? So it's like, at what point do you draw the line in the sand that like where we're going to be switching and correcting the strike zone when we're not? I mean, I've been back there where literally they throw a strike, ball, and you're just like, next pitch, home run. But you know what? Like,
I guess it's
Mistakes are part of that's part of the game, right? Like that's what makes baseball
very
great.
Character building aspect of the game.
But like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
like if they're gonna try and implement it, I think that's the easiest way to do it. To where it's got to be. It's just like when they brought in review.
So are you
they never get the reviews right.
I'm not, yeah, I know. And that's the thing.
that is true.
Well,
It's
you know
so
what I mean?
true.
It's like,
It's
you'd
that,
be like,
but then
yeah, and hit
also-
him. You literally see the ball change directions. They're like, nope, you're back here. You know?
It's the same thing with like when they implemented it. Like, there's so many rules out there now that are like, well, that can't be reviewed when it should obviously be a reviewable play. It's like, okay, well then why did we implement?
Yeah.
I think
this?
people are just worried about the ninth inning, 2 outs, bases loaded, and then like something like that happens, or it's like an automatic strike zone, and like, oh well, if we had the automated zone, then that would have been called differently.
Yeah, but then I mean, like people don't, and this is a little maybe far fetched, but then all of a sudden you have technology calling. Well, like guess what's hackable? All technologies. So like,
Yeah.
are we going to worry about teams? I mean, they were relaying signs with trash cans,
That
TVs,
is so true.
smartphones.
That's a
the
good
next thing you
point.
know, they're going to be
Apple
hiring
Watches.
people, Apple Watch, like literally, like Red Sox. Really, they didn't get in. They got a little bit in trouble. They were relaying signs through Apple Watches from up top. They'd watch, relay it down, call it out.
Golly.
So like next thing you know,
That's
what are we going to
so
be
true.
hacking the strike zone? Like I don't know.
You know, we should just go back to the
But,
1700s and
like,
play it like that way. Or
But the strike
1800s.
zone's like what we were talking earlier is like what you do is you take the catching position, you just turn it into a second DH. So now
You just put a backstop back there.
a guy like me has zero chance to make it in the big leagues ever, because now you take receiving out of it. You take you take so much. Receiving is so important because you're trying to make every strike stay a strike. That's the biggest thing in receiving. Is a strike needs to stay a strike, and you're trying to turn the borderline pitches into strikes. I mean, even if they're 2-3 balls outside, you're trying to be that good at your job that you're trying to get. You might get that call to strike, and they keep track of that.
And nowadays,
strike
They
zone
keep
percentage.
track of
There's
how many
balls-
times you're able to put the glove.
Keep a strike percentage.
There's-
Turn
And-
a ball into a strike percentage. Like,
no
they keep track of that.
way.
there's probably
I have a
10
website. I'll show it to you.
Yeah, there's probably
Wow.
10 or so statistics now that measure all that.
So I hate to put you guys on the spot, but who is right now the best in the big leagues with those numbers? Do you guys know?
I'd have to look because it does change. But I mean, you always have your handful of dudes who are in the top 10.
Gerdall.
Yeah,
Grandal.
Austin Hedges is always top 15.
Which again,
Buster
narratives are
Posey,
so
Grandal is
Yeah.
he's-
narratives are so interesting
like
because
Salvador Perez ranks dead last in
and that's the
every
thing. Everyone
receiving
loves
category.
Salvi, everyone loves Yachty,
Yeah.
Everyone loves
Yachty ranks very mid average to slightly
He's
below
gone
average.
down a lot because
Even when they first came out, he wasn't
So at what point has he ever been number one?
receiving. I mean, he's good at it, but he's never been the number one receiver based on stats.
No.
Like the actual. If you go watch a game of Yachty catching at the beginning of his career, you'd laugh at his receiving skills. They're not good. Now I mean, he receives the ball well now, but a lot of his calls he gets is just because he's Yachty Molina, not because he's receiving as well as you think. I mean, if you're a kid and you're watching trying to learn how to catch, don't watch Yachty catch when it comes to mechanics. Watch Yachty catch on leadership, game calling, his body language behind the plate, throwing. And even throwing, he puts himself in positions that a young catcher just can't do.
No,
I mean, he's literally
That's why he's
literally sideways
cheating.
when he's cheating so much. Which is fine. If you get good at cheating and know when to do it, do it. But if you're actually trying to teach catching and you're a young kid, and don't ever tell them to go watch Yachty Molina unless you're looking for the leadership skills, the game calling, the body that his just the way he presents himself. Like, he always looks like he's in control, and no moment seems too big. He's always very calm. You know what I mean? But when it comes to blocking, I mean, his technique is not good, but he blocks really well. It's just, but if you're looking at his technique, it's not that great. But he does a very good job of setting the ball up to his chest every time.
So Salvi's dead last in majority of the
Salvi's
statistics.
dead last in everything but throwing.
And then Yachty's probably right in the middle.
Yep.
And then who are your top three catchers that you would recommend for someone to
Wish I had that website.
go look at?
I have it, but I
Let
need
me
to
look
it
up some.
Like when I know my last in 18, it was like Yasmani Grandal was number one receiver. And then you had Austin Barnes, Austin Hedges. I mean, I was even top 10 in some categories. Buster Posey would be up there.
So Buster's a really good catcher.
Buster's very, very good.
Muto's been up
Yeah,
there a lot.
Riamuto is very good receiving.
Which is crazy because you
Zanino, very good receiver.
You and Buster Posey have a similar path where he played multiple positions. You went in as a middle infielder. I find that very fascinating.
So he was too.
Yeah, that's crazy.
He was a shortstop his freshman year of college.
Same college
at Florida
too,
State.
right?
He started as a shortstop, and then the last 2 years caught.
So Tyler Flowers, I don't know if he's still
he
in the
retired,
game.
but he was top receiver,
Yeah.
and he used to be a terrible receiver.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And he was a backup too for majority. He was like a guy that maybe played 40.
So all those names, those are the guys that the guys needed to be looking at as mechanical wise, receiving wise, watching them in a full game.
Pirates catcher.
Who's that? Stallings?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a pretty good receiver.
Yeah, he's up there
He
usually.
moves his glove a lot, but he's pretty good.
Yeah.
Now, from a blocking standpoint, who would you recommend as being one of the best blockers in the league?
I think there's a lot of them that are just really good at blocking. But I mean, they have a stat for that too, like literally blocks allowed or like runs.
Do you have the website that
I'm
you can
trying
share?
to find it.
It's it's like the same way as like defensive runs saved.
Yeah,
in a way.
it's literally that.
It's that statistic. Blocking is very hard to measure because there's a lot of guys that get the job done, like you said with Yachty. Like, he's going to get the job done, but it may not look pretty. But then there's guys out there that look really, really good back there that block the ball well, but then guys run on them a lot when the ball gets
to
in the
make
dirt.
it look pretty, you mean their positioning for the block is not very good when they do block the ball. Is that what you mean by pretty?
It's very.
Or is it how far
Like,
the ball goes?
I mean, I one knee block all the time, like when I played, and that's not technically the right way to block,
It's
but I
not
was
the,
good at it. And
set in stone way
yeah.
of doing it.
So that's why it's always kind of like whenever you talk about the mechanics side of things.
So for 2019, and this is a statcorner.com, and I know
It's called
use,
statcorner.com.
They use another one too, and but I mean, you have Austin Hedges won. Roberto Perez with the Indians was a very good receiver. Christian Vasquez, which I'm not a huge fan of him, but he's still really good. Grandal, Barnhart, Flowers, Max Stassi, Victor Carantini, Austin Barnes, Tom Murphy,
which is crazy
Thomas
because
Nito's great.
yeah,
Now that I think about it.
because if you look at how the fans are rating these catchers, I'm on right now. I'm on ranker.com, which this is like upvoting and downvoting on catching. You have JT
Realmuto.
Realmuto is number one. Grandal is number 2. Molina's number 3. Contreras is number 4. And Sanchez is number 5. And then you have Buster Posey at number 6.
And what is that? What website is that?
This is ranker.com. So this is the fans voting it. And for this, there were
fans have no idea.
There were 13,000 votes, but I mean, I wouldn't say that they don't know anything. I would say that they're more attracted to the hitting aspect and the throwing aspect, which I want to get the point across for coaches is that, and parents and players, is that you being a good hitting catcher doesn't mean that you're a good catcher. You being a good throwing catcher doesn't mean that you're a good catcher. You might throw out some guys, but how many runs are you saving? How many strikes are you getting? How many strikes are you maintaining?
Exactly.
Those are the huge aspects of it. Because even on the All-Star game, the ones that were in the All-Star game, Buster Posey, JT Realmuto, Yadier Molina, Omar, I don't know how to Narvaez, and then you had Salvi, and then you had Mike Zunino.
Yeah, I would agree with all those except for Salvador Perez. He's just there because he hits.
Makes sense.
That's it. And I'm not.
You gotta also remember, like, a lot of the All-Star stuff is all fan voted too.
That's what I'm saying. That's my point.
They're fans of the game that think they know a ton. They might know a ton about statistics, but they don't know a ton about like the little details that go into it and what to actually look for. They have no idea. Mm-hmm. Some might, but if you're a fan who's never played, like, and you just know stats, like, you don't know baseball. You just know stats. And if you don't know all these catcher stats that exist, and you still think Salvador Perez is the best catcher in baseball, you're just dumb. Mm-hmm. Like, it's very much that simple. But fans, like, voting for best catcher, like, some of them might be right, but
I think the whole point of that whole thing is that it's all based on hitting and throwing right now.
Yeah.
Which if you are a developer or you are a player that wants to reach the next level, the decision makers are really actually looking at receiving, blocking,
game management.
They
They love guys who can throw, but they also want to see if you can receive. Or if you can't receive and they're recruiting you, do your hands look decent enough that we can teach you to receive better?
And then, someone's going to say, well,
because you don't want a guy with no arm either.
Yeah, but they're going to say, Rafi, but why do showcases only do pop time?
Because
it's the easiest statistic or easiest thing to measure.
True. It's easy to measure, and then at the end of the day, you can't have a track meet out there. So, like, you still have to be able to throw people out, but in reality, they're not stealing off of you. In most cases, they're stealing off the pitcher. So when your pitcher does give you a chance to throw a guy out, you have to be able to throw him out. Because at the end of the day, the best catcher, might throw out 50% in a season. On average, the major league average is like 24%, 27% caught stealing.
Caught stealing.
So, I mean, you're telling me at least 70% of the time the guy's safe when he steals. So, like, that's another reason why throwing is not as important, is that even the guys with cannons might throw out 30% in the season.
Yeah, but also the running game is down, though, right?
Running game is down.
Because I'm not going to take that chance to actually run. It has to be,
yeah. If you're a guy like, Billy Hamilton for a while, I can remember them being like, dude, stop stealing. Like, you're getting thrown out as many times as you might have 30 stolen bases, but you've been thrown out 15, 20 times. Mm-hmm. So, like, it's just not worth the risk.
Because he's a guy that could easily score from first base and the ball in the gap.
So you're like, dude, let's just leave you at first and double your scoring anyway. So, but like with what you're seeing with arm strength is that you can't have a guy who throws 60 miles an hour down a second because I'll steal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, yes, it is important, but it's not as important as you think. In most cases, even at the high school level, they're stealing off of the pitcher. We had guys, one of my good friends, he would sit there and he'd stopwatch the pitcher's times in the dugout, base stealer. He'd be like, well, 139, I'm safe. And I'm like, what? You don't even know if the catcher's good. He's like, no, I know it takes me this much time from my lead to slide into second base.
So his number was 139.
Literally, like, and I'm making up a number right now.
Yeah, but
like quite literally, he would know from his 12, 15-foot lead to sliding into second, it took him this long. If the pitcher was 139, he would then just do addition and subtraction and be like, the catcher has to be 178 for me to be out.
And there's not.
And the chances of that the catcher has to be a 185 to throw me out. with a guy who's 138, 145,
And that's
whatever it is.
basically
Because then you're just adding.
That's basically best in the league.
Yeah, you're adding times. So you're like, I know what my 30-yard dash is, and I have a 12-foot lead.
Because 185, so 185 is like, that's best.
That's probably the best ever is going to be like a 1.7 something, or I mean, I think Johnny Bench might have thrown Thurman Munson might have thrown like a 1.71 or something like that.
Yeah,
like the MLB average on the best, I think Real Muto has the best, and it's like a 193 or something like that. His average.
So that's crazy.
Most guys are at the 2.0 flat at the big league level.
Yeah,
like average. Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point for anyone that's thinking about pop times too. Like, yeah, the lowest score is nice, but what's your average? What are you averaging? And especially, what are you averaging in pressure situations? I think that's a very important point that a lot of guys don't think about.
Well, and then you add in accuracy. So everyone's pop time. Well, are you accurate?
Yeah.
Because there's this thing called tag time. So a lot of major organizations, they couldn't care less about your pop time. They want to know what's your average throw down there, plus the time it takes for on average, the infielder to catch your ball and tag a guy out. So now, if you're a base runner, you know, okay, if the pitcher's 135 to home, the catcher's 1.9, let's say, but he always throws balls chest high. So now chest to the ground is another few tenths of a second. So now pop time's great, but like if you can't throw it waist high and very accurate all the time, you got to mix in the tag time. So now that's an extra couple tenths of a second the guy's got to take from catching the ball down to tagging the guy. So in reality, your pop time should be how fast you get it down there, plus the time it takes on average for your guy to catch it.
I've never thought about tag
guy.
time.
So like if you're a guy who makes it difficult for your infielders to tag guys quickly with throws at the head, throws even at the chest. Like honestly, every throw should be at the waist, throwing down a second, because you can just go straight down.
That's why a lot of people say like bounce the ball.
Bounce is almost better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can just straight to him. But tag time's a very important statistic no one thinks about. You can be 1.5 down there, but if you throw it head high every time,
you got to think everybody's not Javi Baez tagging at second.
Yes. No, Javi Baez, he's so quick.
He's so good at tagging. Like I don't think people realize like how good at like I think people realized it when he did it in the baseball World Baseball Classic when he did a no look tag.
Yeah.
And he's done that a couple times.
Yeah.
But
Yachty was behind the plate on that throw.
But before that, I was like, he is really good at tagging.
I had him. So in AA, he was my shortstop with the Cubs. And I was a guy who always threw out anywhere from 25 to 30% every year. Like, was fairly accurate, had a good arm. When he was my shortstop, I threw out 50%. He was that good at tagging that if I just put it near the bag, the guy was
it's just in and out. It's just
there was times I'd be like, damn it. and like he's making this crazy tag the guys out. And in my mind, I was going off of what most average infielders how quick that I would know based on how the guy's sliding in, like, oh, he's going to be safe.
So how many steaks did you buy him?
None. He had way more. He had plenty of money.
The other thing
he bought me steaks.
The other thing that you have to think about also is how many infielders actually work on that.
I know.
They don't.
How many
scared.
How many teams actually work on catcher to infielder?
Well, actually receiving the ball from the catcher, like it just doesn't happen. No. We did that in college, but we never talked about it in high school. Never talked about it in youth baseball. No, zero.
You don't. That's the thing. It's the same thing as like catchers practicing in a practice trying to go throwing down to second base, third base, first base. They don't practice it during regular practices, and so that's why a lot of people say like the only time you showcase that is in between innings.
Yeah.
So, but that goes back to being able to do it. Like you have to be ready at that point when you get your chance. You got to get them out. So that's why I think a lot of people still do emphasize on that throwing stuff, is because when you get that one opportunity to do that, you got to be ready. It's just like guys like, let's say Arenado, when he does those plays,
Derek Jeter plays.
Throws,
yeah.
The only reason he's good at that is because he practices it in between and before games. So you got to be able to get ready for that one opportunity that's going to happen to do that.
Well, I think it's also the basic fundamental building blocks of any player. Like I always view it kind of like karate, that you have to have. It's the basic needs list. Mm-hmm. What are you doing first, and then you're building that up. Which I want to do that in another conversation because we're reaching that hour mark. So I want to basically bring you guys back on and talk about how to actually produce a strong catcher, because I think we gave it a little hints here, but I just wanted to build the foundation for it. So I really appreciate you guys coming on. Any parting advice to the listeners on catching really quick, or are you guys good? Everything's been said.
I mean, yeah, I think we've covered a lot of it. My thing is just toughness.
Yeah.
And like you brought it up earlier with getting used to the ball hitting you. And I think a lot of young kids, they're not used. I mean, like some lessons, I've made 3 kids cry blocking, and not on purpose by any means, but they're just not used to the ball.
Well, you have to get to that
and
point,
I'm like,
though, right?
I literally look at him and I'm like, hey man, if you're gonna be a catcher, like you have to get used to the ball hitting you and it hurting at times.
Yeah.
And looking at the parent and they're just like, oh nope, you're good. So like a big thing, if you're a parent listening and you have a catcher, is like, can your kid block a ball, and is he okay with the ball hitting him? Is he flinching? Is he this? Is he that? And if you can handle that, we can teach you to receive. We can teach you to throw. You can literally take a guy off the street and actually teach him to be decent at catching.
Yeah.
That's why they do it
it's
in the
very
major leagues all the time with a lot of other guys.
They always have a third catcher ready to go. That one of the position players can all, if you threw him back there, could at least somewhat handle themselves. And so that would be my advice. With last thing I want to say is just the physical toughness that goes into the catching position. And if you can't handle that, then don't waste your time.
Yeah, just find a different position.
That would be my
Cool.
last couple
Yeah,
thoughts.
going off of that, so you see a lot of guys when they do drills with younger guys, they have them get into that blocking position and they just throw baseballs at them.
Yeah, it's a great.
My dad.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only way you can do
I
it.
know.
That's the only way you start. I mean,
you just got to get used to the ball hitting you.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, good luck.
No, literally. Like,
But
don't waste your time.
I would say
Yeah.
this: you got to have fun. You got to have fun with it, especially with the younger guys. Even when you're doing these lessons or working with them, you have to still make it fun. Yeah. You have to change it up, even if it's doing hand-eye coordination stuff, changing the ball up,
or just
doing
little
bare hand,
little games and
little
competitions.
games here,
Yeah.
like blocking, maybe trying to see how many they can block in a row, or doing.
Well, if
things
you
like
want to,
that.
if the listeners want to see like different things that you work on, we've posted some on the Rawlings Tigers Instagram handle. We've also you've posted on your TikTok as well.
Yep.
What's
Even
Trent? What's their TikTok handle?
I think it's just Trent Leimkuehler.
Okay,
I think it's that.
I'll put it in the show notes. It'll be
Yeah.
good. So
And then also a lot of stuff on the iron catcher stuff with drills that we've done with guys from the Tigers. So
cool. Well, guys, I really appreciate it. And then listeners, if you want to see our pretty faces, go ahead and subscribe to the Rawlings Tigers YouTube channel. That's where we're posting this video. We also have the Closing Pitch podcast. You can subscribe to that on any of the podcasting platforms. You can also see that on the YouTube channel as well. That is the Closing Pitch on YouTube. So thanks again, guys, and we will catch you in the next episode.